howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Patch 3.18 is now 8 days away and we finally have some serious news to report on it. This is the first of 2 videos that I'm going to be putting out on today's announcements. This is going to cover the high-level features of the Sentinel League. The next video will be going in-depth into the patch notes. Yes, we have patch notes. Link in the description below if you can't wait for that video. So, the Sentinel livestream that was held about 2 hours before I'm recording this video contained 2 major things. There were some changes to the endgame and the Atlas passive tree and the like, and then there were things that relate to the Sentinel Challenge League itself. To give you a bit of a sense as to the changes that are going to be happening to the Atlas, the Keystones are being added. Where we currently have notables, which are the nodes that have a little bit more power, and also small nodes, we're now also going to be picking up Keystones, and Keystones look like this. Stream of Consciousness has a meaningful drawback. Your maps cannot be modified by fragments, aka no scarabs for you. But your maps have 50% more base chance to contain extra content, which means abysses, breaches, blights, expedition encounters, legions, and metamorph encounters, delirium mirrors, monsters imprisoned by essences, ritual altars, rogue exiles, sacred grove, shrines, snuggle caches, strongboxes, and tormented spirits are extra content. So you will have 50% more chance to get all of those mechanics in exchange for locking yourself out of using scarabs. I expect that this will be an extremely popular choice very early in a league, and it will also be something that a lot of players will respec out of as soon as they're able to do so. And this is the sort of thing that's being added in the form of the new Atlas Keystones. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Additionally, there's a number of other things that are outlined in this description document, as well as in the trailer. So the Sentinel League is the next major focus. I want to start with the Sentinel League, then I'm going to come back and discuss the specifics of those Atlas Keystones. The Sentinel League is interesting in that it feels like it's drawing inspiration from 2 past leagues in Path of Exile mostly. One that was executed very poorly in the form of Torment, and one that was executed quite well in the form of Legion. So Legion introduced the Watchstones. It wasn't called Watchstones, it was League Stones. Legion introduced League Stones, which were various consumables that would last for several zones and that would impart mods to a various area. Now, what the Sentinel League is going to do is instead of League Stones, you will have Sentinels, which are going to be temporary things that will last for many zones, but not for a large number. And these will be temporary consumables that will have some impact. But instead of being on a zone, it'll be more like Torment in the sense that it'll be a restricted area of that zone. You will be able to control when you use it though. So with Torment, you find these ghosts while you're running around, and usually you accidentally burst them down off screen before you're aware they're there. With Sentinel, you will have complete agency over when you proc your Sentinels. You'll be able to use them once per map, and you'll have 3 different ones of them. So you'll be able to use, or at least at endgame, you'll have access to 3 different ones. So you'll be able to choose when you set them off and be able to strategically min-max that. Then you'll get a huge boost to both the power of monsters around you and also to their rewards. You'll be able to use these on trash monsters with 1 Sentinel. You'll be able to use them on magic and rare monsters or unique monsters with another one that will be much more limited in the number of monsters that it can affect. And so you have a fair amount of agency. I really want to play with this system and see how it feels in practice. It seems like it's going to be the best parts of Torment, which there aren't many good parts, but there are some, as well as the best parts of Legacy. But of course, we have to play with it and see if it's as good as it seems like it could be. So Sentinels, as we say, are consumables, and when you've got 2 Sentinels that are burnt out, there's a way that you can combine them into a new Sentinel that has new additional mods on it. You'll notice that these items are always corrupted, so they're immune to normal forms of crafting. That's something that GGG learned from the Legacy League. Legacy also had that system, and I do think it made Legacy play better. It just minimized the amount of make work that you had to do. You can then reconfigure your Sentinels. This is a mini passive tree for the League, and this seems like it could be something to experiment with. There's probably going to be a fair amount of discovery There's probably going to be a fair amount to discover with this, so I'm keen to see how that plays in practice, but we don't really have enough information to go deep into that yet. And as I was saying, when your Sentinels run out of power, you can then combine them into a new one, and you can get some special things from these that will do ridiculous stuff. There's also unique Sentinels. These will be rare drops, and I don't know how rare. One of them is quite interesting in that it is essentially a very limited use case headhunter, and that's something that is actually not all that powerful, so it doesn't need to be all that rare, and it's something that could be a lot of fun to play around with. So that's the Hollow-Eyed Skull. When a character kills an empowered rare monster, they gain its modifiers for 20 seconds. People may have remembered the Prophecy that used to do this. Prophecy being a system that was removed from the game a couple of leagues ago, but there was a Prophecy that used to essentially give you access to the mods from one rare monster for a short period of time. That was actually not very powerful at all, but it was something that could feel quite impactful when you got something ridiculous like Soul Eater or a Haste Aura for a short period of time. And I think we're going to see things along those lines. That said, there are a number of changes to rare monsters. We'll come to those later. Then there's a couple of other ones that change the nature of how Sentinels in general work. This one's particularly interesting. Empowered monsters drop 18 currency rewards, and this can only empower Suncaller Asher, so that's the boss of the park map, and only in a tier 16 map. So this is something that basically boosts a specific map boss. It turns a map boss into an Uber version of that map boss, and creates basically a new fight that you can have a go at that will also drop 18 additional currency rewards, which is a lot. Now, you will be able to also use Recombinators. These seem extremely powerful. They will let you combine two items, and this feels like it's got a little bit of an element of how Synthesis League used to work, and looks like it can do some pretty ridiculous things. I have a feeling that this is going to create some of the best items in the game, and you will see why when we get to that Astral Plate there. So here's one example it's been used. Domination Tether Stygian Vice that has taken a little bit of item A, a little bit from item B. And then we have this Prismatic Ring with Hunter Influence, which has non-channeling skills have -10 to mana cost, which is a very high number to have on that ring, as well as a maximum power charge, which is amazing. There's a lot of raw power on that ring. But then we get to the ridiculous one, which is the Astral Plate. 100% increased global defenses. So this has been harvested from a Grasping Mail, and that Grasping Mail has then been combined with an Astral Plate in order to create an item that otherwise couldn't exist, an Astral Plate with 100% increased global defenses. I think there will be some truly ridiculous items that could be made from this process. We do not know yet how this is going to work, but I would expect that getting an item like this would be extraordinarily rare. Oh, and also have a look. It's got the Keystone Magebane on it as well. Magebane is absolutely ludicrous when it comes to an item like this, because Magebane is a keystone that causes your dexterity bonuses it causes dexterity to grant you spell suppression instead of increasing your character's evasion. Well, given that you're using an Astral Plate, you probably don't have that much evasion rating on your character, so you don't get much benefit from it, except that with Magebane you do. So I think that this is an incredibly powerful item, and this is likely to be one of the, this item is likely to be one of the very best things you could create with this new system, and as a result, I don't think it's something that players will actually see very often, but still, it's pretty ridiculous. Lastly, being an Astral Plate, it can certainly be upgraded further by the use of Eldritch Crafting, assuming that we can still use Eldritch Crafting on fractured items. Now, we have all of the changes that are taking place to the Atlas passives, and what I wanted to do here is show you from GGG's press kit a number of the things that were not put in the actual live stream as well, or itself, or not all of them were. Dance of Destruction is really interesting. Monsters in your maps have 25% less life and deal 25% more damage. The vast majority of players do not want to allocate this, but it's there for a specific niche. You feel like you're too tanky, and you feel like monsters are dying too slowly. Maybe you're playing a Juggernaut build, and you want to try and speed up the rate at which you're killing enemies. Well, Dance of Destruction will come along and will help you there. So this is something that is a really interesting choice. Do not allocate this unless you're very certain that it's the right call for you. There is something that does the reverse that I think will be much more popular, where monsters deal less damage but have considerably more life, and I think that will be a much more popular choice. Grand Design. Small Atlas passive skills grant nothing, but your maps have 1% increased pack size per allocated notable Atlas passive skill. This is something that I think will come online once you start over-sustaining maps by a lot. And at that point, you can say, all right, I'm just going to cash in all of those little things on the passive tree that are granting things like 1% chance for an adjacent map to drop or things like that. Instead, those will get fed into giving you pack size instead. Grand Design, I think, will be on most people's endgame Atlas passive tree, but this is absolutely a trap while you are establishing your Atlas. Take this very late in progression. I would suggest taking this once you have gotten most of the passive points from Maven invitations. So maybe once you hit 125 points, at that point you probably want to take Grand Design, and it should be extremely, extremely good then. But you will start slowly losing maps over time, most likely once you've got this. Of course, at that point, you can then unspec Grand Design if you start running low on maps, and then you'll start over-sustaining again. Singular Focus is next. Maps found have 200% more chance to be favorited maps, but if they're not favorited maps, you'll instead get a basic currency item drop instead. This is designed for two main purposes. I think there'll be one group of players who will be, I want to get value from I want to get value from all of the excess maps that are dropping. Those players will allocate Singular Focus and take 12 different favorited maps. And then the other group of players that will want this is players that just want to run one map. Maybe you want to run nothing but strands. Well, you can do that. That was a nightmare for me in Legion League, and not Legion League, Legacy League, but for some players, they definitely like that playstyle, and Singular Focus will support that playstyle. I think that this will be a popular choice, but I would suggest, just for your own sanity's sake, do have multiple favorited maps. Even if there's one map that is your absolute favorite, I would suggest just taking a few of them because you will burn out. That was my experience in Legacy League, where people were really farming strand maps all the time. It got boring quickly. Twist of Fate is next. Your corrupted rare maps and any Atlas missions, map crafting options, and scarabs applying to them are modified unpredictably when opened. This is really interesting. If you have scarabs that you don't want, then this is something that is going to let you get some value out of them. You'll get the effect of a random scarab instead. So you can stick a Torment scarab in with a corrupted rare map, and then when you open that corrupted rare map, the map itself will change, but so will the scarab. It'll do something else. One thing that's really important though with this, you'll need to be very aware of this, that it may change the mods on the map, I believe, and as a result, that could be pretty dangerous if you're, say, allergic to Reflect on your build. Memento Mori is one of the first of the Uber boss content ones. This is really interesting. The Cortex is level 85. Venarius's full power is unleashed in the Cortex. Venarius drops 3 additional rare items with 3 less common synthesized implicit modifiers. This is actually something I made a suggestion during the middle of the league that, and obviously I think GGD were probably already working on it, that a lot of the bosses could have some additional support on the Atlas passive tree. And I don't think GGG took my idea on board. I think they were probably already working on it. This is going to have a lot of really interesting consequences because these boss fights are designed to be the feared level. That's what GGG was saying afterwards, or Chris Wilson during the discussion. So if you want to just fight the Cortex as it's intended originally, you don't allocate Memento Mori and you fight the Cortex at its normal difficulty. But if you want to upgrade it to be about as hard as the feared, maybe a little bit harder, then you allocate Memento Mori and you'll get some additional rewards for it. Now that's the Cortex, but there are also other fights as well, and there's one of these for most of the other endgame bosses. So, the Absence of Symmetry and Harmony is level 85. The Eater of Worlds full power is unleashed in the Absence of Symmetry and Harmony, and the Eater of Worlds has 25% chance to drop an additional exceptional Eldritch Ichor. In addition to this, there are also a couple of new unique item drops that are only available through these various passives. Throw the Gauntlet is the same thing, but for the Maven, and the Maven has some interesting new unique drops as well. Well, they're not uniques. You can now get Awakened Exceptional Support Gems. These are such a mouthful to say. Awakened Empower, Awakened Enhance, and Awakened Enlighten are available, and they basically can level up to 4 instead of 3, and presumably they can then be Valed to 5. Thirst for Knowledge is the same thing, but for the Searing Exarch. Eldritch currency items dropped by the Exarch have a 50% chance to be duplicated, and as well as that, there'll be a new boss drop in there. Perfect Storm empowers Cyrus, and the empowered Cyrus looks really interesting. So we actually get to see a little bit of the fight mechanics with Cyrus in the videos. And Cyrus's spinning negation beams, instead of being 4 beams that rotate, it's 6 beams that rotate. And additionally, there is a storm permanently active in the center of the arena. So you've got a lot less room to move in the fight, but it definitely seems like it's going to be a tough fight, but an interesting one. In exchange for the extra challenge, there's a 20% chance to get an Awakened support gem from him, which is almost 0 at the moment otherwise. I think Cyrus is like 5% chance to drop them normally, so that's considerably increased. And then we have a couple of other passives. Wandering Path, notable Atlas passive skills grant nothing, but 100% increased effect of small Atlas passive skills. Basically the exact opposite of one of the other ones. And Wellspring of Connection, which is also the opposite of one of the other ones. Wellspring of Creation, sorry. Monsters in your map deal less damage and have more life. So if you're feeling like you've got too much damage and you're a bit glass cannony, then you can spec into Wellspring of Creation and then unspec it once your build is complete. So lots of new options on the Atlas, and I think one of the things that's really significant here is that with these new boss fights being juiced up as much as they are, it's something that then allows for some use for some of the character power that you get both from ridiculous items through the Recombinator, but also through some of the existing balance mistakes in 3.16 in the game. So these are the Uber Pinnacle boss rewards. We're just talking about that there, where we've had a look at all of the Atlas passives that spawn them. Awakened Empower support, level 4. And also 130% cost and reservation multiplier. I have a feeling that's 140% for Empower normally. Awaken Enlighten is cost and reservation multiplier 88%, and Awaken Enhance is 24 to the quality. So these are exceptional supports that can level up to 4 and then presumably be Val to 5. Now, Thread of Hope is really interesting. Thread of Hope isn't changing. It's Forbidden Flame. Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh are actually getting some brand new passives that are being added. These are things you can't otherwise allocate. So for the Witch, there is 9 lives available. We don't know anything about what 9 lives does, but if you can get these 2, then you're going to be able to find out what it does. There'll be a number of new unique items. So there is the Burden of Truth. A lot of these were designed by the winners of the boss race that was run in 3.17. So the Burden of Truth Crystal Belt is really interesting for hybrid builds. It's something that is a belt that rewards you for having both life and energy shield and stacking both on a character. I think every Inquisitor is probably going to want this as an endgame item if they can get their hands on it. It also has Supreme Decadence, which is a thing that allows your life flasks to apply to energy shield as well, at the cost of only having 70% effect of their base effect. Echoes of Creation is a Shaper-themed Warcry helmet. This is something that looks really interesting for sort of re-empowering slam builds, and something that players are going to have to experiment with. When you attack, you take 15% of life as physical damage for each Warcry exerting the attack. This is somewhat scary, but not as scary as it sounds, because you will be able to mitigate that. The Eternal Struggle is an Onyx Amulet, and is something that, and there's, this can drop either from the Searing Exarch or the Eater of Worlds, I believe, but which one of them is dominant is going to come up based upon which one it dropped from. Then we have Call of the Void, which is I think is an Uber Elder drop. All damage, or maybe it's Shaper drop, it's one or the other, and all damage with hits can chill, but all damage taken from hits can chill you. So it's got a significant drawback, albeit one that players can exploit. And enemies that are chilled by your hits can be shattered as though frozen. Enemies chilled by your hits lessen their damage dealt by half of chill effect. So essentially, whenever you chill an enemy, you're getting sap for free. And also you just need to chill enemies in order to proc Herald of Ice, which will be really interesting to see how this plays. I think this will be a really, really good item, and I really want to see how it plays in practice. Then there is the thing that's probably most interesting, Impossible Escape. This jewel is absolutely phenomenal. This is a new version on Intuitive Leap. People may be familiar with the unique jewel Intuitive Leap that lets you allocate things within a radius of your current passive. That lets you allocate within a radius of the jewel socket that you place Intuitive Leap in. whether they're connected to your passive tree or not. Impossible Escape does this, but instead of your local area, the local area of the dual socket, it instead has a particular spot on the passive tree that it's assigned to, and it's a circle around that item. That is going to be fantastic to play around with, and there are going to be some Impossible Escape combinations that are extremely powerful and extremely sought after. There's also going to be another version of the hardcore solo self-found race to kill the new Uber Pinnacle bosses. This will be run along the same lines as the 3.17 one, and there'll be endgame unique items and divination cards that are able to be designed by the winners. This will probably be a fairly elite. Event, but it is something that will be open to people to participate in and have some fun. Although I do think there's probably only about 50 or 100 players that are likely to have a chance of winning it, and I'm certainly not one of them. Now, one thing that is going to be controversial, and I'm not happy with this decision. There is going to be basically no character balance changes in 3.17. In 3.18. So we're going to see a repeat of the 3.17 meta. I do understand, actually, with Chris Wilson did explain why they did this. Partly it's an experiment, but partly it's because they feel like 3.17 was interrupted heavily by the launch of two other major games, Lost Ark and Elden Ring. And they feel like a lot of players haven't had the chance to play around with the current meta. And so whilst for those of us that didn't play either of those games, like myself, this meta can already be feeling a bit stale, they feel like it's something that, because a lot of people didn't experience the meta, they're going to keep it as it is. I'm sort of fine with that, except for Crystallized Omniscience. I think is just in a really, really broken state and really did need to be nerfed. But also there's a number of ascendancies, like Trickster and Juggernaut are in a terrible place at the moment, and they should have been adjusted. Additionally, it seems like there are no new skill gems in this league. So basically, any 3.17 character should work in 3.18, although the ones that were optimal against the 3.17 content may not be optimal against the 3.18 content. Now, the next thing that's changing is a big deal. The rare monster mods are being overhauled completely. And by overhauled, we mean replaced by the Arch Nemesis mods, with the Arch Nemesis mods having their numbers squished down. So some of the top-end Arch Nemesis mods are being nerfed pretty hard, but broadly speaking, rare monsters are not going to have their old mods. They're going to have mods that are easier to identify at a glance, and that will be the Arch Nemesis mods. I think this will be interesting to play around with. Some of the worst ones, Ice Prison's being nerfed hard. It's no longer going to affect your ability to use movement skills, and also a couple of the others are being nerfed as well. Grasping Vines is being globally nerfed, and that's going to be something that will be impactful all the time. I think that all of the rare monsters you fight are going to have a bit of an impact, but more importantly, you're going to be able to tell at a very quick mouse over whether this is a particularly dangerous monster or not. So keen to see how this plays in practice. I do think that this is actually a nerf to Headhunter though, in the sense that some of the most powerful mods that you can steal from monsters will no longer be around. There's a bit more work on the controller side of things, and for those of you with a Steam Deck, you should be able to play Path of Exile properly on it. And so I don't know how well the controllers have been going. Main complaint that I've heard from people who have been using controllers is that it's too difficult to swap between controller and keyboard. So a lot of players like controllers in maps, but do not like it when doing any sort of inventory management. And hopefully that is something that's fixed. At the moment, you have to actually log out. So you have to go back to the login screen, not even character selection, but one step further than that, in order to change between mouse and keyboard versus your controller. And that's something I'd really like to see changed. There's a number of quality of life features which are going to be revealed over the next week. And then challenges are being overhauled somewhat. So one of the things that GGG have done is that they've had a number of challenges that have been focused at more inexperienced players. And this has been the goal of going for 12 challenges in the past. It's like, if you can finish the core storyline and do a couple of little other things on the side, then you'll get your 12 challenges and you'll get your first reward. What GGG are doing is they're removing some of those challenges. You'll still be able to get your first reward if you're reaching that sort of same point in progression, but it'll be 6 challenges instead of 12 that you'll have completed. Then, for people that have been going for 24 challenges in typically in leagues, that's now going to be something that the same sort of level of progression will get you 12 challenges, which will get you your second reward. This is the new set of challenges, challenge UI that's coming out. And you'll see here that we've got 10 different rewards that come online as you progress to 40 challenges. Now, the goal that they've gone for here is that these get harder and harder, but these get far harder than they have been in the past at the top end. So people who were previously getting 2 MTX rewards should still continue to expect to get 2 MTX rewards, but people that were trying to go for all of them will have a number of additional challenges. Be really interested to see what all of these challenges are. One that's interesting, defeat possessed rogue exiles. So that's something that's going to take a fair bit of messing around to get done. Not going to be all that hard, but presumably you need to get 34 different rogue exiles with the way that that's written up. That's going to take a little while, but it's something people will manage to get done. And that's also interesting in that it's quite early in progression. And so you can see how there's going to be, there's a lot of space for really hard things to be added there. There'll be a new replacement for Kirak's Vault. So there'll be a new system along those lines that will be released. Don't have any real details yet, although I guess we could make some informed guesses based upon the artwork that we see here. Who knows? And then they've released the new supporter packs. Additionally, if you're interested in getting a whole bunch of artwork, I would suggest downloading this press kit here. This is a whole bunch of high resolution images of things related to the game. Some of these will be useful as wallpapers and the like for your PC. Anyway, that's all we've got in terms of the high-level overview of the features. The next thing I want to do is put out a video that's going to discuss all of the ins and outs, a bit more of the patch notes, and that's going to take a while to put together. May your Volobs have interesting results, and I will see you around for that one later.